1 hour. Oh, pardon me.
How did you get in here?
Through the door, actually.
So, what may I do for you then?
Much, I hope.
I realize that these offices have seen better days, but they're really just a place to organize papers. As you might imagine, more upscale offices, more upscale prices.
Oh, please don't misunderstand. I'm actually quite impressed by what I see. I guess it's hard to say exactly why. But I know that it may not seem this way to you, but that there's much treasure here.
Treasure, I doubt. But what brings you here, if you don't mind my asking?
Ah, a proposition. Something you might find challenging. I've been watching your career for quite a while now, and I thought it was time I introduced myself. And I've heard that you're a lawyer of last choice, that you're a man with an open mind, and you even win occasionally.
Occasionally. But even when I don't, my client's case gets heard.
Not a way to get rich, I'm sure, but I don't think that's what you're after.
Your point?
Take, for instance, the case of Terrence Rice.
What do you know about that phony?
Oh, a very great deal, but specifically that you didn't take his case.
That's right. It wasn't for me.
Of course.
And as it's my duty under the law to preserve confidentiality, I'm under no obligation to share any information about him that wasn't in the public record.
Well, fortunately, I need none. He was guilty. He murdered several people, and in each case, he claimed that he was under some kind of seizure.
Dude, you look really bad. You don't look so well, man. You okay?
That you could have gleaned from the papers.
But if you actually look at the facts involved, you'll see that each of the victims was at a disadvantage.
Yeah, and some of them were even drugged by him. That may not have been in the papers, but it was right there in the forensic evidence.
Yeah, well hidden, however, considering the fact that most of them did a fair amount of heavy drinking on top of everything else.
So what's this to you?
Only an observation at the moment. You see, Rice was a disturbed man. But he did turn out to be a person of means, or at least his relatives were. I believe they offered you $3 million, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not even going to ask how you knew that.
You turned it down.
I did.
Any regrets?
No.
But you did consider before answering. You're quite a remarkable man in many ways.
Maybe. But can we please get to the point? What do you really know about Terrence Rice?
Well, that gets into some rather sensitive territory, but let's just say that he worked for me.
Oh, now it comes out. And what do you want from me?
Whoa, let's back up a bit. I'm only using Rice as an example. He really has nothing to do with this visit. Although I was quite involved in his life, he never had the presence of mind to even know I was there.
Oh, are you his shrink? More on this insanity plea of his?
Insanity is just a simplistic term for a very complex human condition which is easily and frequently misused.
He wasn't insane. He just pretended to be.
And very successfully, too.
Look, enough about Rice. Who are you?
Well, you might say that I'm a conductor. I orchestrate various mechanisms. Mechanisms are like machines. Sometimes they can run by themselves, other times not. Some are complex, some are simple. Greed is an example of one such mechanism, although in Rice's case it was more a matter of power.
What the hell is that supposed to mean?
Mechanisms yield results, outcomes, of which hell is certainly one, but a more down-to-earth example would be that if you had taken Rice's case, I doubt that you'd need office space in this building.
Maybe not.
Well, in fact, that one case would have led to many others equally well-paying. More money, prosperity. And all you had to do was to convince a judge or maybe even a jury that Terrence Rice was insane.
He wasn't.
Not in the traditional sense, no.
He read up on insanity. He faked his symptoms. He was an artist.
Whose only real lack of sanity was an absent conscience. But only you knew that.
So?
So you didn't take his case because you knew he was guilty.
Let's say that's true. What's it to you?
I supervised the mechanisms, as I said. But Rice didn't need much supervision. Power was his hook. Beyond that, he had a lot of latitude. Yours was greed and a longing for superficial success. But you never took it. You never did.
One more time. Who are you, Mr.
Well, oh, it would be a cliche to say I have so many names, so I won't say it. Why don't you just call me Mr. Jones for now? I haven't used that one in a while.
As in Jim Jones?
Now you're catching on. But no, I hadn't thought of him actually. You know, the most obvious ones really aren't much of a challenge. Trust me, most people don't need me to corrupt them. Their own natures do just fine. Although in Reverend Jones's case, even I was surprised at how inventive he ultimately became.
Look, if this is some kind of a sick joke, it's gone far enough, all right?
It's not.
And so you're telling me that you're the devil? Just so I understand.
I see you don't believe me. Well, I guess I ought to be used to it by now. Most people don't even acknowledge that I even exist, which usually works in my favor, but you know, if time wasn't a factor, wouldn't be a problem. We could do this all day long.
Are you going somewhere, Mr. Scratch?
Jones is fine, but yes, I am. You see, my being here is rather unusual. I've arranged for a kind of neutral ground, a protected zone, if you will, so that we can have what you might think of as a private conversation. You know, client confidentiality, but that's not something that my counterpart can allow indefinitely.
So how much time do we have then?
Let's see. Less than an hour, I suspect. Oh, and by the way, I know that you're a man of faith, so please don't waste my time by thinking you can cast me out up in the name of you know who.
I suppose you're going to offer me something for my soul?
No, not at all. Neutral ground works both ways.
God, I think I'm starting to believe you. But it would help to have some kind of proof.
Proof? Oh, you mean something like maybe lighting my cigar with my finger? Or spontaneously turning into a horned beast?
Sure, why
Something
not?
juvenile like that?
Yeah, why not?
Well, for starters, you wouldn't believe me. You see, you live in a time when these sort of magic tricks are daily entertainment. Look, since time is short, let me suggest something.
Go on.
You didn't take Terrence Rice's case, but you did consider it very seriously.
I consider all my cases seriously.
But in this case, you drew up a contract, and you were prepared to sign it. Does anybody else besides you know that? You shredded it most effectively that night. And you drafted a note the next morning turning the case down.
That could be a lucky guess. Of course, I'm not admitting you're right.
Look, you don't have to. Before you shredded that contract, you actually picked up a pen with the intention of signing it. You held that pen in place for 21 3/4 seconds. Do you remember that? Now you're probably thinking that perhaps I went to all the trouble of putting up a surveillance camera in your home.
That's possible, hypothetically.
But even if I did that, there's no way I could have known the following: that for one of those 21 3/4 seconds, you considered signing it because you knew that if you turned it down, somebody else would come along and take it. Correct? A poor argument, I admit, but you acknowledged it at least. You also spent about 2 1/4 seconds considering the fact that Rice, faker or not, did deserve a fair trial and an adequate defense.
Everybody does under the law.
Yeah, but for almost a full 18 1/4 seconds, you puzzled over the biggest hurdle of them all. Do you remember what that was?
Suppose you tell me.
You were afraid the poor little Grace would leave you if you didn't take the case. She works so hard for you. She sacrifices so much for you in your career. $3 million would have gone a long way to seeing her a lot more comfortable.
She didn't know about the money.
No, but you did. And as far as you were concerned, you were living on borrowed time in that relationship. Your first wife finally ran out of patience with you and your convictions after all, turning down cases that you could have easily won and taking on others that nobody else would touch. Her fault, by the way. It wasn't you. You see, her hook was envy. Big time envy. It's a wonderful mechanism. It catches them all the time. Cost you a relationship. And you thought that this one was going to go the same way too.
I don't know about that, but I guess I understand her desire for more security. But why am I discussing this with you anyway?
But she didn't leave you, did she? See, had you taken the bait, things would have gone downhill very quickly. Being true to one's own self is a good recipe for finding out what's important in life. Oh, by the way, in case you were wondering what happened to that 1/4 of a second remaining, that was set aside statistically to cover the time that it would take your brain to react to whatever decision you made and to fire up your sinus muscles.
You're very thorough, but you really don't look like a devil.
Surely you know better than that. You of all people should know that nobody is what they appear to be, especially if they knock on the door to this office.
Touché.
Besides, your marriage was made ironclad years ago.
Why, that's...
Angela Tate.
I haven't thought about her for...
6 years, 12 hours, and about 40 minutes.
That long?
No, I just made that up, but I'm sure it's been a while. You were dating your current wife at the time, and then you met Angela.
It was San Francisco. The reception after the conference. She never told me what she was doing there.
She flirted with you, you liked her. One thing should have led to another, and...
It didn't.
No, it didn't. The mechanism was in place. Do you have any idea how long it took me to set that one up? You weren't even married at the time, so it wouldn't have counted as adultery.
No, just fornication.
A minor technicality, really. You'd only recently met your wife. Do you regret it?
I'm not saying that she wasn't attractive. It's just that...
It's just that you hardly knew her, and you didn't want to do something you'd regret later. You knew you didn't love her. You could tell that she didn't have much in common with you, except lust, of course. But you decided to wait. Do you have any idea how wise a decision that was? That was your test. After that, there was nothing I could do to seriously threaten your marriage. It wasn't even worth trying.
All right, Mr. Jones. Let's say you've convinced me, at least for now. What is it that you think I can do for you?
When you didn't sign that document, I discovered 3 things about you. Number 1, you're smart. You may have thought Rice's insanity game was transparent, but it fooled everybody else. Secondly, you're a good lawyer. Before you even picked up the pen, you'd already worked out 3 different approaches, any one of which would have resulted in an acquittal. The A lawyer who eventually ended up with the case had 1/10 of your intelligence. And last but certainly not least, especially for my purposes, you're one of the few people in your profession who's relatively untouched by my mechanisms.
He still won.
By blind luck! His case was a disaster, and he didn't pick up many others. If you would have won, I could have done so much more with you.
What, more mischief? More evil? You see, now we're reaching a trouble spot with me. Let's say you need a lawyer, and we've already established that I won't defend a guilty man. Why in hell, pardon the expression, do you think I'd even consider working for you? How much more guilty can anyone be?
I take your point, but let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered why I do what I do?
Not really.
Has it ever occurred to you that this is a job not much different than any other?
I can't say that it has.
Well, think about it now. Why must there be mechanisms of evil? Why must there be evil people? Have you ever seen the movie Schindler's List?
I generally don't have money for movie tickets.
Oh, well, here, be my guest.
Hey, wait a minute.
Now you've seen it.
I didn't ask for...
No, you didn't. But don't worry, it comes with no strings. If you want, I'll erase the memory when we're done here. Now, based on the movie, what was Schindler?
A hero?
Not originally.
Well, by his own admission, he was a profiteer in slave labor.
And a failure as a businessman and a husband. But he did something great, as you pointed out. Now, what would Schindler have been without Hitler?
I couldn't hazard a guess.
He would have been a miserable failure as a businessman and a poor excuse for a husband. But you see, with Hitler, he became a shining example of what people can become. He embodied self-sacrifice. But without Hitler, he would have forever been a diamond in the rough, like so many people who aren't sharpened or polished by adversity. You see, by helping supply that adversity, I'm actually performing a public service.
Oh, you can't be serious. Heck, you should be the lawyer, not me. Next, you're going to be telling me that Hitler's killing over 10 million people was worth it just so that we could have a few heroes.
Look at the calendar. Those people would have been dead anyway. And besides, if they would have lived another century, it wouldn't have made any difference to them.
But what about the suffering?
Again, largely irrelevant. Those who are truly evil would regard any suffering that they experienced in your realm as a pleasant memory compared to the torment that awaits them below. And those who defeat the mechanisms by embracing the one above scarcely remember their suffering after mere microseconds in paradise. Again, as I said, I'm only a supervisor. The mechanisms do what they do, and they're largely driven by flaws of human nature.
What about Henry Thackeray? Are you going to tell me you didn't orchestrate that?
Good example, actually.
He practically beat his stepdaughter to death. I know, I saw the photos.
Well, actually, he did beat her to death. She survived a few weeks, but her injuries eventually took her down. A long few weeks, I may add. But she had it coming.
What? The man had a history of sexual abuse. He gets off on a technicality after molesting her, and then he has at her with a sledgehammer.
Clawhammer, actually. That was my idea. But he came up with the rest of it. Very inventive. And as far as the sexual abuse was concerned, you should have read the case file more closely. He was innocent.
Innocent?
He spent a whole month in jail before the trial because the little brat who accused him had some issues with her mother. Boy, that girl was a piece of work that even I'd like to take full credit for. But while in jail, both the inmates and the guards worked over poor, innocent Henry Zachary quite expertly. And that so-called wife of his, when she came to visit, she spat in his face.
I didn't do anything. Every sentence she has for
I didn't do anything!
screwed up because of you. I will be catching you, man. Someone's going to kill you right now!
All because of a lying little gremlin who had a devious mind and a sick sense of humor. Well, when it finally came out that there wasn't enough evidence to hold him, what do you think happened to little gremlin? Nothing. But Zachary, on the other hand, he had an undeserved reputation. He lost his career. He had to spend hours in sexual abuse counseling, all for nothing. And poor little gremlin got more and more sympathy. Now that Zachary's actions make more sense to you? He confessed to the beating. He even provided pictures for the evidence. And his exact words to her were, and I quote,
"You want to put me in jail? This time it'll be for a good reason."
That still doesn't excuse what he did.
well, of course not. Had he chosen not to dirty his hands, things would have gone a lot better. You see, even gremlins can be reached with a long enough pole. His forgiveness would have opened her eyes. Her confession would have restored him and put things right. But again, these are mechanisms. He made his choice. So did you.
So, based on all of this, what are you asking of me? Are you telling me that there's no lawyers in...
Cheap shot, but that's just the point. You see, any lawyer under my control does me no good. I need somebody on the other side to plead my case.
And what is your case?
Simply that my job serves a purpose and that some, if not all good, comes from evil. But that's not etched in stone. You can come up with the argument. That's all I need you for.
What argument? What do you hope to achieve?
What you have freely. Forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
I want to repent. Wouldn't you?
But you've just got done telling me you haven't done anything wrong. How can you repent without remorse? If you're forgiven, are you just going to continue to tempt people and cause all that havoc?
Maybe. It depends on the deal. Let's just say I'm open to negotiation.
Deal? Negotiation? We're talking about people's lives here. We're talking about sin. We're talking about righteousness. I know these may not matter a lot to you, but they certainly matter to us.
Yeah, but you need to understand that to me, this is a job. This is something that I've gotten good at. This is something that I know. A few souls here, a few there. Mechanisms, you know? Look, I am what I am. Neutral ground, right? I'm being honest. Now, whether I'm sorry or not, I'm on the losing side. And this war is almost over. Now, if you were me, would you want to end up in hell? That's not evil. That's just stupid.
Well, I suppose not, but...
You're justified by faith, remember? You're all sinners, and you've got this loophole. Before this whole business winds down, I want in on that.
You're calling Christ's sacrifice a loophole?
What else would you call it?
Redemption.
Fine, redemption, faith, whatever you want to call it. The fact is, I want in.
Okay, but what makes you think that that would apply to you?
Well, who's to say it wouldn't?
Well...
You see, I promised you a challenge. I knew you were up for it.
I admit I don't see anything obvious, but that's to say. I mean, there may be a precedent.
Keep it going.
Hey, wait a minute. That doesn't mean I'm going to accept this. And what makes you think I can help you anyway?
You're a worthy adversary, a diamond polished brighter than any other, at least any other with your skills, and you're sincere. When you pray, you don't just mumble nonsense to God, you pray. And whenever you worship, you don't just moan and grunt out of habit. No, you take it to heart. You can stand in the presence of God, and you will soon.
And you want me to put in a good word for you?
No. Any idiot could do that. You're a lawyer. I want you to make a case, the ultimate case. Now, after we get finished here, we won't have any contact again. Would you consider taking this on? You know I've got a point, don't you?
Well, I suppose, but just finding out how to approach the problem,
Well, I have faith in you. You are all I've got, assuming you'd agree. But all I can offer you is a challenge. But it's not about money for you, is it? And if there's something else that I could offer a little more tangible, well, it might be taken the wrong way.
Don't worry, this would be pro bono, assuming I'd even consider it.
Well, I'm in no position to ask any more of you. Just consider it with an open mind. And now, I think my way is run out. Oh, believe me, you don't want to do that. But thanks for the gesture.